can be mortals.
Welcome, mere mortal lights, to another episode of the Mere Mortals Musings. You've got two mere mortals here, Kyrin,
Juan
on the other side, on the 13th of December 2023, live as usual, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. We would love for you to come and join us. At the moment, it's just on the YouTube, but hopefully in the next month or two, I'll be able to get this on the podcasting apps as well. So, YouTube at the moment, more to come in the future. Musings episode is where we dive deep into a particular topic, a theme, and we expound upon that practical philosophy, effective philosophy. So this is really implementing things that might be out in the airy-fairy world and bringing them down to the real life. And today I chose today's topic, but Juan's probably going to be doing most of the talking. I hope so. And this is because we went to a little barbecue house gathering this last week. And it was actually Juan's, not housewarming, but pre-housewarming.
Let's be clear. Not housewarming.
A pre-housewarming.
Pre-housewarming.
So it was a couple of friends, mostly old high school friends, plus one or two others getting together. And, I had a look around the house. Very, very nice house. It was beautiful place, beautiful family. And I thought, Juan's probably gone through what? I don't know. How much effort how many hours would you have dedicated over the last 6 months to buying this property, would you say?
I'd say an average of
2 a day, something like that?
2 hours a day.
Yeah,
I'd probably say 2 hours a day for like 6 months.
Yeah. So that's like racked up quite a few hours just straight up there.
Yeah.
That's a couple of hundred hours of research. And I have known in the past, one has bought a property before, so he's not a complete newbie to this. So get into, I suppose, all things related to Australian property in particular. That's what Juan definitely knows, but also just the general financial decisions of buying property, location, that sort of thing. And I'll take the opposite side, and I've got some negatives to why you shouldn't buy property.
Oh, okay. So, that'd be nice. Yeah.
Where should we start off, Juan? What do you think is a good starting point for this discussion?
When I was thinking about this coming into this particular point, now I got no notes, but
that's all right.
I shouldn't need any notes. It's all off the top of my head, really, because it's quite recent. So yes, me and my family did purchase a new property not too long ago, and it really does come down to, and probably where I'm going to focus in some of these bits and bobs of conversation, although you can obviously differ depending on what you're looking at is, and the word I feel like I'm using a lot in 2023 is what you're optimizing for. So at least for me personally, when I'm looking at the house that we just purchased, it was very much hey, this is a family home.
Correct.
A family home is going to have X things, Y things. You'll be more sentimental around, oh my God, I want to have these views. I want to be able to lay back and have these experiences. You're not necessarily looking at the numbers, apart from making the numbers work so you can have it.
It's not as much of an investment decision. Oh, all right. Maybe we can start off with this. If you're a young family or you're a young person and you're maybe looking to buy your dream home, and this is the home that you want to live in for, let's just say the next 10 years or something, maybe even longer, 20, 30. How much of that decision making is based on it as an investment, as in you'll be able to sell it for more in the future, or it'll hold some sort of like the financial sort of aspect of it, and even in the buying of it, versus the location, the amenities close to it, the type of neighborhood it's in, that sort of thing? How much of you would you say was like, looking at economics, finances, this is what needs to happen, versus, it's got a nice school here. Oh, I can see the sunset from this location. Oh, it's got there's a river nearby.
Well, look, take a view of housing as an investment. So purely on I'm just going to drop away all the other stuff and we can get into the variables. I'll just say, what are the variables that you probably are looking from a housing perspective?
Yeah.
But purely from an investment, I think for a very long time, you can go back thousands of years in terms of owning assets, owning land, owning big things. That was always a valuable thing, and I think it continues to be valuable. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying it's obviously not a valuable or a thing people should do, right?
We can maybe talk about that with the digital world upcoming upon us.
However, if you were to look at it very directly, and so I'll borrow here something from Ramit. He says
that's Ramit Sethi, I think.
Yeah. So with rent, and Do I agree completely with all the stuff he talks about from a property perspective? Not so much.
So he's like a financial,
Yeah, he recently
like
had
how
a
to get rich, something like
he had
that.
like a Netflix sort of show go on about money. He actually had a back and forth conversation with me on Twitter just the other day. I was kind of debating him about some of this money and stuff like that. So it was kind of cool. It was kind of nice. I had a lot of people backing me up, which was interesting.
Okay, good.
But the main call I do agree with is when you rent, that's the minimum amount that you're going to be paying on a week-to-week basis or a fortnightly basis, whatever. When you own a home, the loan is the other way. Renting, maximum amount you're going to pay is the week-to-week. Yeah,
I was going to say.
And from a home loan perspective, it's the minimum you're going to pay. Obviously, there's lots of other fees, there's maintenance, whatever, right? So there's that aspect of looking at it from, investment, there's other things that's hidden.
That was one of my points.
But the other one around with investment I think people need to realize is, and of course, digital things have changed. There's things like Bitcoin or NFTs or whatever else you want to look at. If you're purchasing a house purely on an investment perspective, I think be in the know-how that it's a low, it's sort of on the end of, okay, it's a slightly safer bet, but with a less return on your investment than other things that could eventuate. Yes, others have higher risk. However, if you're looking out there to, I'm going to purchase properties and I'm going to become, quite wealthy, that's the long slow game. And nothing wrong to that. Obviously, people have built up, great portfolios doing in that. But obviously, you wouldn't go into the path of, hey, I'm going to buy this investment property in 5 years, I'm going to retire. It probably won't work that way.
Off the top of my head, just in terms of the general investing in finances and looking at this on a decades-long scale, maybe even longer, like hundreds of years long scale, I believe the general return of investments, and some of these are super new, so obviously you can't measure Bitcoin because it's only a decade old, but I believe it was like, cash is the worst, that actively dissipates and goes down. Bonds, so buying into the government will give like a couple of % per year on average over many years. I think it was then something like housing would be in the 4-ish%, something like that. And then I think equities, so stocks and things like that, are closer to like 6 to 8%. I could be totally wrong here, but I don't think I'm totally wrong.
Yeah, so
the numbers might not be exact, but I believe that was the kind of general ranking order.
Sure, and look, and we're not going to get into like you can make calls of, if you've got property, you're leveraging money off the bank, which sometimes you can't leverage money for some of the other assets. Plain and simple though, the particular purchase that I went in, there wasn't a whole lot. If there's going to be investment numbers or you're thinking about it, I was really looking at it from a, 5 to 10% ratio. It was, yes, I understand what I'm purchasing in terms of the valuation of the area and the location, but as an investment, there wasn't a whole host. I'll tell you what, in fact, I only saw it because it popped up somewhere like 2 days ago. I wouldn't have any clue how much I would rent it for. No idea. And I guess that wasn't the intent of the place, right? I'm not
your own place. Yeah,
thinking to rent it out. But I just never even looked into those numbers to go and calculate
$100 a week. That's what I'll give you.
$100, folks. That's how much it'll cost. That's the Australian market declining. But, if you go and have a look, I've got a spreadsheet with like a full big fat spreadsheet. I've got a master spreadsheet, folks. Master Excel spreadsheet. Huge. So many tabs. Some of those tabs are in terms of property. So in each one of the properties, there's a whole breakdown of every single expense, costs, rent, predicted. I've got like a 10-year, how much it'll, is it going to be up and down in a 10-year cycle, all this sort of stuff. Some of those, so, property that I have, that are investment perspective, you better believe I'm looking at the numbers. I don't give a shit anymore about, well, is it facing east and where does the sun go up and is it making too much noise? Well, no, I don't care. It's more very particular to the numbers and how it works and the taxation strategy and blah, blah, blah. Cool. Make it focus on it if that's the particular. For me, more so it was the variables of, okay, it's moving into a home where, look, I won't say it's particularly going to be my forever home. There's certain reasons for that. It's not going to be a forever home. But it's going to be a home for the next foreseeable future. 10 years, 15 years, something like that. That's probably going to hit the market. And so for those, you start looking at the living variables that actually make more sense to look at as, well, as I said, as a family, young family, anybody going to live somewhere.
Okay. I want to ask more about the investment sort of financial things, but for you particularly, when you bought this home, how much of your decision making was based on the finances versus all those other things I was mentioning, location, closeness to schools, all that sort of stuff for you personally?
So for everyone, I think this will always apply unless you literally have like infinite money or a billionaire or something like that. There is a cap where you want to sit yourself on, whether it's
Of course,
you're buying out of cash, loaning, whatever. You're going to go, okay, cool. I've got a limit for a particular reason. So finances wise, there's always going to be some sort of constraint, which is good. More constraint you have, the better it can be.
It makes decision making
now,
easier.
Here was an interesting one. The first time we purchased the property was in 2016. Now, earlier? No, 2016. So in 2016, purchased our first property. And
this is jointly, yes, you and your partner, yes.
When we purchased that property, there were some hardcore constraints, aka we didn't have much available. The income wasn't great, so the options were minimal.
That's
right? It was
like 1-2 years out of uni for those who are wondering.
So this was like very.
So he'd just started making money. He's still paying off HECS
still
debt
HECS, which is student loans here in Australia. It was cutting it a bare minimum of what's available. It made it kind of easier though because of those constraints, right? If you've only got the option of 10 things, well, you got to choose out of those 10 things. That's the best thing you can get. Obviously now, time's gone forward. We've been fortunate. There was a lot of options, right? And so finances, while obviously there was that constraint, it was less of a constraint. And so because of that, we had more problems in our hands. So to give you an idea, in this process, yes, we've landed on a place that we're living at now, which amazing, awesome, really glad that we got there. In that process, one, we actually won another property. We won another property where we put more money in than the second person, but they ended up going with the second person anyways. They didn't
like Latinos.
I don't know what's going on. The other property, we got it. We had the contract all signed. We backed out of it for. We can talk about the variables when you're looking at housing and stuff like that. So we backed out for a particular reason. A third one, we were waiting for almost a month around. We thought we had the highest price, and then we were glad that it didn't end up going through ahead because of the other issues that were around the area. So, finances definitely maybe put us in more strife in the sense of we had more options. And so with more options came more looking, more locations that we could look at, more variations of the properties that we could look at, or the things that we could accept, not accept, etc. And so that made it way more difficult. So obviously it played a part in the sense that it gave us the availability for more, but the availability for more made it harder for us to then choose a particular thing. In the end, the one that we ended up choosing, at least for a family perspective, yes, finances, and I'm talking two parts. There's purchasing, there's, I guess, if you think like a business or anything else, there's a capital expenditure of actually obtaining the asset. So did we have enough money to obtain the asset? Cool, that's what we need. Awesome. We go through that process, and if you're buying a property, if you're buying it, at least in Australia, auction, or you're buying it, on the market type of deal, and you're paying for it, you're gonna have 30 days, 60 days, whatever to settle. Cool, that's your capital. You need that capital to get the asset into your name. But then there is the ongoing operational expenses that you have to incur, aka maintenance, paying back a loan, paying whatever else might be outstanding. You also have to consider, okay, cool, can you do that for the foreseeable future? Can you do that if you have to go on a holiday? Can you do that if you don't get paid for 2 months, something like that? So there was both the consideration of obtaining the asset, capital, and maintaining the asset, operational.
All right, so still didn't answer my question. So let's say ratio-wise, just from your explanation, 50-50? I don't know. 50% is like looking at the finances, looking at going, okay, this is what I can afford. This is roughly what's in the market. This is how much, bond or margin, what's it called when the mortgage, down payment.
Gotcha.
Down payment. This is how much I'll have to do. This is what I can scrounge up myself between me and my partner. And then it's also, okay, like we've kind of got one, we're going forward on this, and then it's like, it's in a floodplain. I'm not sure I really want to do that. Or what was the reason for you backing out of one of those?
Well, okay, so how much was it? It's weird in the sense of, okay, maybe I'll put it this way. If in 2016 I had the option of 10 properties, we have the option now to buy 1,000 different ones now. But we constricted ourselves to like a narrow band in a more of the upper level of what we could afford, and then screwed ourselves over because our expectation was, if we're paying that much money, we can get all these things that we now want in attributes of the house. And now the market has moved, we're talking Australian market, prices have moved, expectations have moved. And so
talk more about that.
That then changes. So look, finances, I'll say, like 50%, a big amount of it parts. So You don't go to a place and go, well, I'm going to buy no matter what because whatever. No. So I'll say 50-50.
That's
50-50 on that regard.
A good way to get screwed over if you're going with that mentality. Okay, that's kind of roughly what I was expecting. The finance, it's a massive purchasing decision, and it's one that you lock in for a long time.
Correct.
So you obviously do need to think about the finances about it pretty hard. But then I suppose in lifestyle choices, where you live dictates a lot of things. I've been saying this recently, where it's just like I feel like I'm in the middle of suburbia, which it's weird because I'm close to the city in some ways, but also not really. It feels like I'm in suburbia here, and it's definitely in terms of just many aspects of my life when I go out for a walk, when where I go out to train, like people in the gym that I'm meeting, they're all kind of like in different life paths than where I am at the moment. It's like, this is maybe where I need to think about where I'm living, so I can maybe live somewhere that's more suited to where I'm at currently in my lifestyle and in my life, and that would just make things better in terms of connecting with people, finding a partner, or even just like seeing family and things like this. It would be a pretty big decision to move out as well, and be like, okay, where do I want to move? So that's roughly what I was thinking recently. Like, if I was going to move out, I'd probably spend about 50% of the time thinking about where can I afford rent wise, what would be good, and then 50% would be location, how close it is to the freeway so I can go back home, how close it is to the places I'd want to work out, or the normal things I do in my life, like how often do I go to the city, is it important to be close to there, all that sort of stuff.
And I think that, and that was going to be the other variables in terms of, okay, we talked about the investment and the finances aspect of it, but from the other side, and again, this is obviously going to be very specific to an individual or the family, or whatever you are, listening at home right now, what you care about, but it would be probably easiest to see, like, in your life, what's the 2, 3, 4 big things that you are routinely doing, or you love doing, or you want to do more of, or you care about, and then finding the place that's going to actually help you out in doing a lot of the things. Let's just say for me. So, clear example, hey, gym. I like to be fairly close to the gym. Now, the place that we've moved to, it's slightly closer, not altogether that much more closer, but slightly closer to when I was living there before. I can get there a little bit quicker. Okay, cool. So, I'm improving that a little bit. 2, big one for us, it was, okay, future school catchment and school locations. Okay, well, where we were before, probably not the schools we wanted to send our little baby girl in the future. Okay, now we are. Awesome. That's a huge thing, right? School catchments for families, or if you're young and you're going to look into that, huge thing. That's a massive thing. Obviously, if you want to be in a particular catchment or a particular area. So
catchment basically just means you have to be within a certain radius of the school, something like that?
Something like that. Sometimes it works of radius, sometimes it works of actual suburb, like catchment areas and lines. So obviously you have to look into it. That big part. Work, obviously. I had a conversation actually today about this with someone where I was talking to them about my new place, and I said, look, in comparison to the old place, I'm probably saving 15 minutes either side, morning and afternoon in terms of moving. And while I might not see so much, because right now in Australia, being summer, it's quite light, everything else, there's 2 parts. One, when it comes to winter, it will be kind of the deciding factor that still lets me get home while there's a little bit of daylight still around for most of the days.
Okay.
Fantastic, especially when days I'm working in the office. But 2, it's the thing at the moment that definitely does enable, especially when we're working a full day in the office or somewhere else, it's what lets me get home and see my little girl before she goes to sleep or in the morning. So there's like that extra flexibility. So again, tick, because it's giving me that extra time with family in terms of closeness from a work context. So, all of those variables for me are important. Obviously, for yourself, you'd probably say, hey, close proximity to, a place that you can work out or, hang out with people, or enables you to, stay social and connected. Something to those effects, right? Yeah. Obviously, but it doesn't necessarily, I think is the important thing. Whatever you decide it is, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go and purchase a house and lock yourself away for the pure sheer, it's an investment. And I get it. It is an investment. It's obviously a very safe, proven strategy. And yes, you can see the clients in certain things, but you can make good claims for the reason of, okay, assets in general probably not going to just absolutely get decimated in comparison to other things. Fine. But, you can very simply rent out in a place, as you're talking about, that you really want to live in, and go and invest the extra that you might have had locked away or something else into other ways, and then recoup that money back and whatnot. Sure, you can do that. So I wouldn't say that those other variables are important, and they might be so important that you kind of deviate away from buying a house, buying the place, to just living in the area, because those things are a higher attribute to you.
Yeah, I'll talk about the investment side of things, because that's something I can add, which is, why has Kyrin never owned a house? Why has he never owned property? Why has he not even gotten close to it? The closest I've gotten to anything was I listened to probably 5 episodes of the Property Couch, which is a podcast, an Australian podcast here. And we'll touch upon that later in terms
Kingsley
of like.
And can't remember the other guy's name is.
Yeah, you should know. You've listened to the whole thing.
I've listened to a lot of them. But
That's
I know Ben
embarrassing.
Kingsley, but I can't remember the other guy's name.
That's pretty bad.
Sorry, dude.
Look it up. Got to call him out if you're doing that.
Let's see.
But so all I've got in here is a negatives list, and negatives. And when I was mentioning before, and one saying like in terms of safeness of your investment, I think that rough list ordering I was saying before of
Bryce Holdaway.
Of Bryce
Bryce Holdaway and Ben Kingsley.
Yeah, Holloway or Holdaway?
Holdaway.
Okay,
Holdaway.
You sure about that?
Yeah. I'll have to double check that too as well. I was like, huh? Holdaway.
I'm not sure.
Holdaway. Look.
Okay. All right, there you go. So, in terms of like cash, bonds, real estate, stocks, that sort of thing, I think when you say safe, it's usually on the terms of a couple years. If you buy it and then you hold it a couple of years, what's the likelihood it'll have gone down? With stocks, that happens all the time, and can be individual ones, and that's why if you group it together as an ETF, it's probably a bit more safer. But even that can go down. Whereas real estate has this air of never really crashing until it does. It always goes up until it doesn't. And once again, there's a Australian housing crisis, which we'll talk about after the Boostagram Lounge. But so my main points here on the negatives of property investing. Unless you can get it positively geared quickly, so this is getting to the point where your mortgage repayments are less than the payments of rent coming in, you're pretty much locked into full-time work. Is there any way that you could not have full-time work and do that? Because I've looked before at imagine you build up a stack of wealth like I have, and it's kind of like a nest egg. I don't think banks are very friendly in terms of lending out to people like me. There seems to be something of, even if you can prove that you've got like cash on hand, that they're not interested. They need to see that you have these recurring payments.
Correct.
So that's just one thing I've noticed personally, which was you need to be you're kind of locking yourself into full-time work or I don't even think they're that impressed with like dividends coming in. It seemed to be like a job.
Yeah, I disagree. Well, let me say it this way. I don't think what you're saying. A job is a very traditional view. I'd say no. What a bank, what a current institution would need is recurring income.
Okay.
Now, the recurring income can be a business.
Yeah.
It could be a job.
Yeah.
It could just be lots of other rental properties getting you income.
Yeah.
If you've got lots of rental, obviously we're talking about there's like obviously top percent people, but if you've got lots of rent coming in from properties, you can sure as hell can get loans because you've got income coming in.
Yeah.
Right? Again, you got to think about it more so at least from Australia, but this happens worldwide in the way the taxation works is what you would set up as your income from a taxational perspective, whether you're a business, whether you're a partnership, whether you're an individual, sole trader, whatever, that is a determining factor that would go same thing as from a bank perspective of, oh, okay, cool. They can pay this, and from a society perspective, cool. That is a kind of repayment structure that we could see being repaid for an asset. Yeah.
I should have said that. I was just generalizing. For most people, it will be a job is their main income or sole income. That's the thing. And so I just found that, and my situation is pretty unique. I'll grant that. And I don't know. It's hard to say. Sometimes I feel super unique, and then other times I'm like, am I just the normal person out here, and we're all just kind of like spread out, and you don't feel it. But in any case, that was one thing I noticed, especially when I wanted to go traveling, and I had some like slight thoughts especially when I was earning a lot of money working in mining, and I was just investing it in stocks and getting hammered. Holy shit, I was in the red for a while. I was like, whoa, this is not working for me so great. Maybe it would be good to invest in property or something. Like I
to not do this.
I had enough income where it was like I can do whatever the hell I want, essentially. And when I was just thinking about traveling, I'm like, just the idea of having a property really was, it was almost like a locking in sort of thing. Now, I know you can buy a property elsewhere in the country and you can get someone else to manage it, so you don't have to be in the same location as it. But it did always have this feel to me of, if you're doing that, then you're just getting all these added complexities in terms of the management, which feels more than other financial instruments. Even if you've got a property manager, the amount of times you've told me about this property manager doing this or coming to you for this thing, or you have to be the one to decide about what we're going to do here, or this hidden expense comes up. And it's
more than your general investment. I guess,
yeah. Oh, 100%. If you buy a stock, you don't have to go to the annual general meeting each year. You don't have to vote. You don't have to do anything. Like you just kind of can set it and forget it. Which seemed very stressful and that sort of thing. Once again, you can get a bit more, it's safer in some ways how you want to do that. And yeah, it was just, for me, probably the biggest thing of why I would not why I didn't buy any property in the past, and why I probably won't for a fair while to come, is just a very illiquid asset. You're buying and holding. If you're trying to flip houses, there's some ways around it. I know my uncle did this thing where I think he was saying it was not the first home buyers act or something, but it was basically like he'd buy a house, live in it for a year, and then he could resell it on, and there would be some discount from doing that. I don't know what it's called. Unless you're doing something like that, you got to hold on to it, because you just get reamed out the arse with stamp duty and all those sorts of things. So very illiquid. If you want to have some financial freedom, or maybe even some social freedom to be able to move where you want in the world, that's just one of my call outs, is like, just have a think about that, because you're locking yourself into something for a fair amount of time.
Yeah, I mean,
potentially locking yourself into a job, potentially locking yourself, which is then locking you into a country potentially if you don't have a digital nomad sort of lifestyle.
True, good point. I mean, I think there are setups to a lot of those things from what you were saying that you could set up. Again, I guess in speaking to this podcast, there's probably effective takeaways. I'm not going to be saying to people like, oh, well, if you own 10, 15, 20, 50 properties, you could do this. Fucking who cares? I don't think anyone listening to this podcast right now is in that position, nor may get to that position. So that's cool. But I would say, if you're looking at property as an investment, and really that's the only percentage of the variable, and if you have a family, you're doing it for, as an individual, you're like, okay, I'm going to buy this because of whatever reason, I'd say just rethink it. It should be a balance. There should be a balance of, as you said, 50% probably in the investment side for sure. Location, what it means in terms of, you start looking at things like, is the area gentrified or not? Will it gentrify? Is the surrounding suburbs, good suburbs? Are they declining suburbs? So it's going to be this. In terms of, location, there's a couple of things around location, but one thing, you look at Sydney, at least here in Australia, quite an expensive property market, and it is going up and up and up. And we'll probably talk about it more so in the Boostagram, after the Boostagram Lounge, but it's, looking at, well, can something be landlocked or can it be expanded? And if it can expand it, does that mean that the valuation of the property is just going to stay steady because they're going to go extend through? So there's all these things that you can obviously look at, but you have to weigh that up with, well, school catchment, is it close to my work, all those sort of things, because those become really, really important. And you can be, you can be relatively wealthy or do whatever you want, but if you're 5 hours out of, living somewhere in bumfuck Idaho and you don't even know where to get to, well, it's a pretty shitty existence if that's not what you want. So you also have to kind of balance it out with that very thing as well.
The last one in the investment was, so your master spreadsheet, all these tabs, all these calculations. What if this happens? I'll put this input here, test this out, test that out.
Yep.
You've now had that for a fair while, 2016. So that's getting 7 years, maybe 8 years. How accurate is it in terms of its prediction ability? Because last I remember talking with you particularly was around COVID, and that investment property had basically not gone up in
Absolutely,
price.
yep, correct.
And so I'm guessing that was not part of your
It wasn't.
investment decision making.
It wasn't.
Now,
It wasn't.
other things have changed, and I know rent on it has gone up crazy, so maybe that compensates, and I don't know what the house, like the pricing is now. But how good is the predictive ability, do you think, of of your master spreadsheet, and then just in general in terms of renting and investing in property?
Just in general, the actual spreadsheet, it's not anything algorithmically beautiful. All it's using is a general percentage of capital gain return over X amount of years, and as it goes on. So the longer time goes, the better the prediction's going to be because the more average
it is getting closer.
So it's getting closer. So if I actually look at the what the predicted 10-year mark is of the property's worth, the property's now approaching that on its way up there. So it's kind of like, okay, it's starting to get close. You're right. 2 years ago, I was like, man, this is not even close. It's not even close. But now it's starting to shrink towards the upway. So it's like, okay, cool. That's nice. So that perspective, it is good. More so specifically for me, though, I'm not tracking it. Well, that spreadsheet is not so much a capital care. Again, going back to capital and operational. That's not the purpose of a spreadsheet or those numbers is not for capital purposes. So what does that mean? That property when I bought it, I'll tell you right now, once again, in 2016, we actually had another property that we actually won first, and we pulled out of that one. Had I held that property, that would have gone up 2.7 times since that time, that house, as it is today. Could have. What is the one I held right now? It's like 1.4, right? So huge differences. Now, it served its purpose. I lived in it for multiple times. It was really fun to have. There was a lot of good memories.
Great location.
I might not have had that in the other place. And so, again, this comes into...
Where was the other place?
This other place was like in Redland Bay.
Okay.
So it was far away, not close to the city, at least here in Brisbane. It's like a half-hour drive. It would have been a completely different lifestyle.
Oh, completely,
So you think about these things and you go, okay, for me at the very least, as it goes on, I'm not... And this at least comes more of a personal thought, is properties for me are not overwhelmingly being looked at as a capital perspective, but much more on the operational perspective. And so the spreadsheets are much more aligned to operational, aka month to month. What does property need from a month perspective? What do I need to be putting in from a month perspective? How does it work out from a taxation strategy perspective? Cool. If I can make that on a cadence and it can just go on its merry way forever, that's what I wanted to do. To be personally honest, maybe our little baby girl will look at it, hear this in the future at some point. One of our plans, talking to my partner, is that property, man, that could be like the future place for her when she goes to study or something like that if she wants to use it. That's those are the things. So for me, it's like, okay, it doesn't matter what the valuation of it goes. Of course, the more from a capital perspective, and leading into the point that you're saying, sure, they are illiquid, but you can also extract a lot of money out of them if the capital comes in, and you can use that money to do other things, right? So that obviously it's a illiquid asset, but doesn't mean that the funds are illiquid all the time.
Yeah,
so
which
variations.
My dad has done too.
Right. So there's variations to that as well. So obviously be aware of it when you go on a property. But then for me, I'd say the spreadsheet is much more operational.
Yeah.
And that master spreadsheet, it focuses all the properties, all income, all expenses, all these little details. How exact that is, I'd probably say it'd be off like 10% month to month. Be something like that. Yep.
There you go. Cool. All right. Thank you, Juan. We'll jump into the Boostagram Lounge. So while Juan's looking up for the notes, we can thank people. There's actually a couple of people in the live chat. So I see Lucas here. I see Dimmelix. I see Westside Baby, the proud
dog.
Take
your dog for a walk, mate.
He is, mate, and he actually lives in what is known as the $1 Million Mud Hut, which is
mud hut.
The good thing about property is like it can be a weird, it's a weird place, man. It's a very weird old place, but like finance wise, it's still done very well. So that's one of the things which is kind of funny about it.
It's a funny
name.
But
Dimalik said, with great wealth comes great responsibility. It also binds you to a location. For me, not knowing where I will be in 5 years, it is a barrier. So that's one of the things actually. That's why I've gotten so much into like cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin in particular, is the ability to go wherever you want with it. And all you need to do is remember 12 words, which I don't do because that's with this noggin. I wouldn't be super confident of that. So I've got other ways of securing those words. But yeah, I I really like that a bit. That even just the thought of being like, I could, Satoshi Nakamoto, he could just have 12 words, whoever that person is, and they could have more wealth than anyone ever. I don't know how much it's worth now. But let's say Bitcoin rises.
I think at the top of the price it was 86 billion.
Yeah, so not more wealth than anyone ever, but goes up another 5 times, which is certainly doable, foreseeable. That's more wealth than anyone ever, and be like, just be walking around.
Yeah, I'd say
Carnegie or something.
It's more wealth than anyone ever
than recently, for sure.
Well, I just say as it stands against the shareable information. Have you seen those things where it's like Elon Musk, the guy, the family who owns LVM, all like, sure. In fact, you can see financially they've got all this amount of billions of dollars or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you look into big Saudi families and dude, they're not sharing their accounting stuff. Those motherfuckers got plenty of money.
Sure.
Like these people are like rolling.
Good point.
In any case, Satoshi Nakamoto, thank you very much.
Yeah, so the Boostagram Lounge, so this is where we thank everyone who has helped to support the show. We really love these live messages coming in like this. Okay. And then we also love getting a message pre-hand. So this isn't a reaction usually to some of our past content. And you can do this by just going to a podcasting app, a newer one. So meremortalspodcast.com/support. And I've gotten a list there of the list and links of apps where you can find out this very show on there. And you can send in a Boostagram, which is a message with money attached. Pretty simple. And the brilliant thing about this is you can just go to any app and try it out. And we'll read off some of these and react to them. So
absolutely. So we got the dependable Dave Jones weekly boost for the Mere Mortal Nation. Dave. 12,112 sats. That's sent using Cron. Thank you very much, Dave, as always. And then we got Petar, Fiji. Woo-hoo! 3,333 sats and using Fountain.
I love it. Yeah.
So Petar, thank you very much.
You've been to Fiji, haven't you?
I have been to Fiji.
What's it like?
Well, I only really stuck around to Denarau Island. I think that's how you pronounce it, which is out towards the west near Nadi. Mm-hmm. And I did go into Nadi for a little bit. Didn't like it. Denarau Island, didn't like it. It was very expensive. I also got very sick. It was also the year that Fiji won the Rugby World Cup or the Rugby touch, something like that, and people was going bananas. Like people were celebrating so hardcore, which is lovely to see.
In a scary way.
In a scary way, yeah. Like I saw people, staff members at the place we were staying, take off on golf carts and just fly over hills as fast as possible. I was like, what's going on? It was weird.
It was hectic,
it was a weird mix. I liked it. Nothing better than a Gulf Coast trip. Maybe I didn't go to the correct places in Fiji. I've heard some other good things about some of the other islands. That can get really, really expensive though. So I didn't go out into the water as much either. Which
you're not living like a local.
Snorkeling is said to be amazing there because you basically just walk in straight into the water and it's nice and warm and you can do that. So there's a lot of things I didn't get to do, mainly because I was sick. Mainly because I had barely any money during that time and you needed a lot of money in those places. I believe we wanted to drink a bottle of vodka. Think an equivalent of what it was then 40, 50 Australian dollars was about $170 there in Fiji just because of the place, the cost for exporting of products and stuff like that. And I was like, man, and that was basically everything. So I think we subsumed ourselves with eating pizza twice a day just so we wouldn't have to spend much more money.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Bitcoin's at $1 million. So Petar was there reacting to me saying I'll shout people tickets to Fiji. So I mean, it's much easier if you're in Australia already. I'll shout you tickets from Australia.
Yeah, very easy.
And once Bitcoin,
if you're in the US, we'll send it to Hawaii or something.
Yeah. I don't know what we'll do, but we'll do something. I did check the PayPal just then. Still nothing on the PayPal. So if anyone wants to partake in sending us a payment, not in Satoshis, but in
dirty fiat money, feel free to do so.
In dirty fiat money, feel free to do that as well. And I think all caught up on that as well. Slightly less than we kind of have been getting in these past couple of months, but understandable because we're have been taking a little bit of a hiatus from particularly the conversations and even just the regularity. Yep. What I can promise is there will be more of these probably starting up late-ish December because I've already got one locked in with a musician. Do you remember when I was saying like I wanted to get a musician on to be able to really know how bad Spotify is or is not fucking people over?
Yes.
And yeah, I've got one lined up who was real into the value for value world. So TJ the Wrathful of the
That's
Doorful.
very cool.
So
Did I tell you about the Snoop Dogg streaming?
1 billion streams for like 46 grand or something. That's
I think it might have been 8 billion streams. Maybe it was maybe just only 1 billion. Anyway, it's ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
crazy. So yes, that'd be cool.
Well, I mean, I know Snoop Dogg's been very into like the whole Web3 world for a while, and I'm wondering, I mean, if he's getting that much for for a billion, like a billion's a big number, man. Like that's I calculated it out
Was
how
it a
much it
cent,
was.
or was it like 0.0?
Oh no, it was like 3 or 4 zeros and then a number per stream.
Yeah.
Nowhere near close. If it's a lot of the costs per mil of just various advertising and places, they all kind of are centered around this. It seems to be around like $10, $20. A lot of things are, and when it deviates out of that, things go wrong. So in podcasting, it was getting up to like 100, and this was back in the era of a couple of years ago for like Meghan Markle, and Spotify was paying big money for the Obamas and stuff like that, and their cost per thousands were all getting really high, and that was just unsustainable. And Spotify is paying for it now by laying off tons of people and stuff like that.
Correct. And sorry, and what I was just quickly looking, which was kind of interesting as you were saying, like 3 zeros and 4 zeros, is that this probably doesn't equate exactly, but 1 Satoshi is 0.0004, I guess it would be Australian dollars.
Okay.
So it would be the equivalent. Could someone make a thing as like, well, Snoop Dogg getting basically that much from Spotify. If basically every time someone listened to a song of his and someone gave just 1 Satoshi, it would be the equivalent. And like, can you imagine that? Like 1 Sat is like nothing in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting like concept of being like, hey, if you could top it over just for 1 Sat, you're basically getting the same amount.
Yeah.
And 1 Sat is not like, we, as you're seeing, we get weekly support of 12,000. It might not be hard to get a Sat sent through by people who are listening to it.
I think in this next year or two, there's going to be some real interesting numbers where people will be able to go, this is how much you have earned, this is how much if you could have earned just with one random person tuning in and sending you like 5,000 sats or something. I think there'll be some real interesting numbers where you can
for sure
chuck around and play and things like that. And I'll probably be there doing it myself, because the Value for Value show I do intend to kick off again in mid-January as well. So a couple of things coming for everyone. Just tune in and look out for that. All right, Juan, the Australian housing crisis. How fucked are we? How fucked are you, actually? You just bought at the peak of the housing crisis here in Australia.
At the peak.
Well, so just context for this. I don't know if it's because so we have a joint YouTube account, which we use to like host, and it's a premium account, so no ads and stuff like that. So when one searches up things, or sometimes his partner, I see, baby circadian rhythm, like ASMR stuff, and I'll be like, okay, well, I can understand
bit of
why that's coming up. Yeah, something like that. But a couple of videos have been popping up recently for me about Australian housing, just the Australian housing crisis / property in Australia.
Okay.
Have you been looking up?
No, I was about to be like, have we been looking it up or something?
I don't know, but this isn't just one. This has been 2. So there was one yesterday or the day before, maybe explainable by me putting up like the thumbnail and then YouTube, recommending this sort of stuff. That's how these things sort of go. But there was one, and so the one I was looking at recently, as in just a little bit before. Where is it on here? Oh, it was on the other account. Yeah, that'll be hard to find. It was basically like an American YouTuber, a financial YouTuber, and he was just going on to like why the Australian housing crisis. Bit of a random topic to get onto for like here it is. So there's one from Bloomberg Originals. This was 2 months ago. Why Australia's housing crisis is a warning for the world. Oh my God. There's Australia's housing crisis explained. This was another one by SF Capital. And the one I watched recently was, if I quickly go into here, history. Warning, Australia's housing crisis explained by this guy, Andrejik, Jikh, something like that.
Okay.
So a couple of these have been popping up, and I was like, all right, well, interesting enough. I'll click on these.
Yeah.
They're 10, 15-minute videos, see what they're like. And basically, they're just saying there's a bubble in Australia. Okay. So one, you're the property guru here. Is there an Australian housing crisis? Are we in a bubble here in Australia?
Well, I find it interesting. It depends how you I think approach that particular question, or at least from what I've seen is the aspect of a bubble, or at least the bubble nature of it. At least for property, I feel like has been discussed for such a long time.
It's always
such a long time. It seems
like it's always there.
In fact, if you looked at it, way back, I think it was like the 1994 or 1996, whenever it was around that time, when it was a massive peak in interest rates and that came down for Australia. Talk of that same thing, right? Bubble's going to crash. Now, where other areas of markets where a bubble has happened and it's crashed, talk about dot-com boom and whatnot. I feel like there's a feel thing. I'm not saying this is a certainty thing. There are some aspects of FOMOing, of people rushing in, like money for rushing in, creating this big old bubble.
Yep.
And then popping because it's unsustainable, right? Now, will I say that the sustainability in the property market is tend? Maybe not as much as some absolute solid base, again, here in the Australian market, but this applies to other markets in the world. However, it isn't. A couple of points. One, it's really large. So really, really large things like this are hard to topple over. It isn't like you, me, people at home listening to this right now. You ain't going to do shit if you decide like, well, you know what? I'm not buying any more property. Or, hey, I'm going to double the price of my property. The market doesn't give a shit. It's so insignificant into this. Useless. So the largeness of it is hard to actually topple over in the sense of, is it going to just collapse completely? There are big old powers, government, other things, which are going to prevent it from doing that, right? They're going to stop it as much as possible. Could it? Fuck yeah, of course it could. You could have gigantic cataclysms that happen in the world.
There's always big things. COVID had a very big impact on property for a while. I know rents, they got down very low here for a little bit, and then they skyrocketed again.
Now, a lot
GFC,
of the...
I imagine something similar happened.
Yeah, exactly. Now, but again, you look at it and at fundamentally, kind of like with other things, so financially, or we're in a bubble and whatnot, fundamentally, what is it that drives people to want a house, an apartment, that sort of asset, right? And it generally is, you need somewhere to live. Just in general, you kind of need somewhere to live. If all of a sudden we all decide we want to be farm animals and live in the streets, fuck yeah. Fuck property, it's gone. We're all going to leave on the grass.
Well, we'll talk about the technology aspects.
Yeah. But, for however you want it, you probably want a roof over your head, right? And if you don't have it, well, obviously it sucks and you know that you want to be living somewhere. So then what follows on from that is, okay, well, what's the incoming amount of people that need housing? And at least for Australia... And I know generally what the broader Australian, but I know specifically Queensland, there's a truckload of people coming into Queensland. Heaps of people. Still interstate coming through. I was seeing some data that came out of some brokerage conversations not even too long ago, a couple of weeks ago. Huge amount of people coming into Queensland, both international and within Australia itself. Yeah. So again, it goes, okay, well, you need to house people, right? And if there's not enough housing to keep up with the demand of people coming in, guess what's going to happen to that asset? It doesn't Just fundamentally, what's going to happen?
Supply and demand.
Exactly. Same thing with Bitcoin. If Bitcoin all of a sudden it wasn't 21 million, it was 12 million, what's going to happen? Right? It doesn't go like, oh shit, it's going to go down in valley. No, it's going to become more valuable because there's less of it and people want it. Like it's a almost must-have type of deal. So I go, are we in a bubble? In parts, yes. However, there's enough demand, at least in the Australian market, that it doesn't matter in the sense of, okay, people are going to put up the prices, rent, or valuation of it, but people are going to keep paying it. Why? Well, because wages are increasing as well. If they bring down interest rates, then it means that credit is available easier to Australian consumers and people want it, so it's going to keep on going. I've heard of that happening, same thing in Hong Kong, Shanghai, obviously cities like going ridiculous prices. A lot of people talk about, well, yes, the multiple in the cost of a house now compared to their salary is very different to back in the days. Absolutely, totally agree.
I can talk about that because there was a couple of things in these videos. So from the when was it? It was from when my parents were roughly buying. So this was in the 90s. Prices have quadrupled, but incomes have only doubled. So you kind of get like, you have to either work for twice as long to be able to save up for a deposit to get a house, or you have to, combine incomes. This was already with combined incomes, I guess, for my parents' day and age. In parents' day and age, it's like 30 years ago. Not even that. I think it was maybe 20. It could have been the late 2000s, early 2000s as well. But yeah, it's really funny with these things, because I wonder how much of it actually is a crisis versus we're just now able to bitch and moan better.
Well, I very much think it's in the places where the demand will be filled, civilization will shift and change to make it work. What is the reality going to be for the generation after us? Like, I'm talking like 20 years, like people who are being born today, right? Like my girl. I think it's going to be a transition where the demand for housing is still going to be as strong. There's still going to be people wanting to come to Australia. Again, unless something crazy happens, there's going to be a lot of people coming in. You got to house people somewhere. It's going to change into more of a or people that do more share housing, live more in build to rent type of styles. It's going to shift towards more of that, maybe living further away from the cities. That might be aided by technology and whatnot. So I think those changes are just going to happen because the demand's going to be there. So it's not as easy to say like, okay, cool, prices are going to decline by 50%. Why would they? If people are still willing to be paying things to be living in certain locations and keep the prices floating, could they go down? Sure. I just don't expect them to be 50% down. That's unlike other places where you have things like deserted cities, right? Or complete places. Spain, Greece, a few other places. Sure, things collapse.
China with their cities.
Yeah, but you have examples there of, okay, there's problems from like a full economical perspective, issues, like economic issues, not just in the assets, but in other assets or in the actual currency themselves. Plus, there's no demand. You could Google it up right now. I think I saw it recently, like in Italy, but I'm sure there's other places. They'll pay you to go live there. They'll. It's like you can buy a house for $1 in some of these Italian, rural places. Okay, is it because like, oh man, they had a bubble and it collapsed? No, motherfucker. It's because there was no demand. No one was coming there. So what are they going to do? Okay, please come and live here. In Australia, we're not doing that. There's other places in the world where they're not doing that either. And so people are just going to come and pay the money that they need to live the lifestyle that they want.
Yeah. So, what explains these spate of videos and how much truth is there to them? I kind of put it down to a couple of things. One, I feel there's the ability to voice your concern and be loud about it, perhaps more easily now than there was 30, 40 years ago. So I'm not necessarily sure, today's millennials, who are people my age, who are Gen Zers looking to buy a house for the first time, I'm not sure that they actually have it worse. I perhaps, but it wouldn't be as much as I think is being made out as like Australia's housing crisis, like crisis as in like, holy fuck, we're all going to die sort of thing.
But you know what's another point, a point that's unfair, I think, in this variation, and I guess we're talking about property investment, and I haven't like fully looked into it, but I have this think where 30, 40, 50 years ago, if you look at the amount of people that were living in the area that you might be looking at purchasing or living in, right? So let's just say 50 years ago, and you can take whatever location you want in the world here, whatever proximity it was to the central business district, to the central area of living or the central area of entertainment, there was just less people. There was less percentage of people who were living in that space than it is comparatively to now. If it is a place of in demand, New York, Sydney, Melbourne, LA, whatever. The equivalent there is, hey, we're living in a place, and maybe at that time it might have been considered the outskirts. Maybe it was considered just there wasn't as much people. Now there's a truckload of people. Everyone wants to live there. It makes sense that it costs more. There might be just a shift in perspective that, okay, 50 years ago, this was considered the outskirts. You're now going to have to live in the outskirts for similar prices, perhaps, but that just means now the outskirts are just much further away from those central business districts. So maybe you can, I guess, technically be getting the same thing in a more like theoretical view of what was considered the outskirts, but just now it's technically much further away. Another example actually I saw was if you, for fun, you want to go have a look at just random like crazy prices, go to the California hills and you'll have a look at, you know, the prices of some of the areas in California and the like. I think every single property that was sold in the last 12 months or 18 months, something like that, in this like humongous area was basically $50 million and up. Like all of it. And there was like hundreds of properties, right?
Yeah.
Now, you look at that and what? Are people going to be saying, oh, shit, it's fucking...
But yeah, like
it's a bubble. What's happening? No, people want to live in that area. They're going to go and pay for it. There's not even the conversation of people who are, you know, coming up and wanting to buy the first property. No, there's just people, lots of people who've got lots of money to be able to do that.
I think it could be related to your point you had, which was that you had this expansion of, you know, I had 10 options when I was, you know, younger, had less money, had less time to accumulate, probably even less knowledge. And yet now you have, you know, let's say 1,000, so 100x change on that. And then that can create a lot of problems for yourself of like, all these dream ones that I want, they're now like too, you know, it's almost like there's too much choice. There's too much of an ability to go on to, what's some of the big websites here to domain,
property, I mean, realestate.com.au.
Realestate.com.au. These are all big websites where you can just go in and you can see everything. You can go, you can see the history of it. You can go inside. You can see photos. You can see all these things. So I wonder if part of it's that. My other thinking then on the opposite side was, in these videos they were talking about things like the capital gains tax discount that you can get here in Australia. So basically, if you buy something, you hold it for a year. When you then sell it, the money that you make off that, only half of it will get taxed. So you get a discount. And it was saying like this, and maybe things like the ability to offset negative gearing. So negative gearing, like I was saying before, if your mortgage is, let's say, $200 a week, and your rent that you're getting from people is $150 a week, and so you're obviously way out in the outskirts with this in this scenario. That $50 a week difference, you can then use that to offset against your own income from your regular job, and then that will lower your tax overall. Anyway, it was just saying like things like this where it was, these can create dynamics which perhaps were unforeseen, unintended, and they had some graphs and you could kind of look at it and be like, oh yeah, you know, capital gains discount, tax discount was introduced here. Massive offset between house prices and the amount of income someone earns. So it's like, well, okay, maybe that had something to do with it. And I could understand why, yes, you know what, now objectively would be harder for someone in their 20s or 30s to buy because of factors outside their control made by government on policy stuff. And then, you know, because I 100% believe this with inflation and how money is created / used in the fiat world, and I go, this is fucked. Like there's so many bad things that come from this, or unintended things. Yeah, I could 100% understand why there would be a housing crisis or a bubble caused by other, you know, random, you know, usually older, wealthier people making decisions in parliament and politics and all that sort of jazz, which ends up having consequences down the line for other people. I could 100% believe that as well. So I think it's probably a mixture of both. Yeah, a little bit of bitching and moaning going on, but also like, yeah, there's a little bit of justification for it.
Yeah, look, for sure. But again, and one other aspect I was just had it in my mind, and something that I saw as well. There was a Australia, obviously specific here, but I think this probably applies to most places in the world. So if you're listening to this from another area, there was a potential investment property that I was looking to buy 2017, 2018. This was on the outskirts of Melbourne to the east, 1 hour out, 1 hour and a half actually on the train ride. And that was in whatever it was, 2017, 2018. And I looked at that property, I never ended up buying it. And I looked at that property again just recently.
Why there though? It's so far away.
Well, specifically, because my mentality was...
anywhere you could look.
Yeah, my mentality was at the time, hey, I still have limited funds to be able to buy things.
Yeah.
Houses out there were still fairly cheap.
Yeah.
I had a mentality of, hey, I can see in Sydney, you know, talking about Penrith and the like, hey, that's an hour to get into the city.
Yeah.
They're all starting to really price up. In fact, houses around there are like $1 million now. So I was going, well, shit. Thinking similarly from a Melbourne perspective, maybe it's on those outskirts where people start living in there, moving in, it gets all this sort of stuff. I was thinking, I looked at it, quite recently, $0 in capital gains. Nothing. That place isn't going up at all. So,
okay.
You go, shit, it's been freaking plenty of years. This has done nothing. It literally hasn't gone up at all. So if you wanted to go and live out there, you can still live on, dirt cheap. You're an hour plus away from Melbourne. But likelihood, no one wants to go and live there. So you look at a bubble perspective. You also have to look at, where, right? Because you can definitely find places where it's still going to be nice and cheap. You're just probably living somewhere that people don't want to live.
For sure, which gets onto the last point. Location. I missed out one of the locations in the thumbnail. There's only 2. But that does get to that point of, what is it about property that's so appealing, enticing, and a large portion of it is the location of the thing. Being able to be close to your work, all those. It's rare. It feels like it's rare that the actual house itself is that much a part of the decision-making process. Does it have 5 rooms, or is it this color? Does it have these type of architrave? Maybe in the case of my brothers, it would probably be a bigger aspect because it is such a weird house. But usually it's related to, is it next to the river? I have a boat. I want to park my boat outside of my house. Or is it close to this place where I get a view? Is it close to these catchment areas? These sort of things. Do you think that the location aspect of property, and there's getting into predictions of the future, could that change with, technology is one thing we should probably talk about. So the metaverse, there's a thing where I've slightly changed my tune where I was like, the metaverse seemed like the dumbest thing I'd ever heard probably 2 years ago when it was real hyped up. Facebook changed their name to Meta, all that sort of shit. And I thought it was the dumbest thing because it was just like, we're still going to be in the physical world and you're still just going to have to need a property and things like this. And I kind of had it in my mind where it was a 1 versus 0 flip. Prices in the real world wouldn't really matter anymore because everything would be in the metaverse, and that's where almost all the money would go. Almost all the decision making about location would be your location in the metaverse. Is this possible?
Exactly.
That sort of thing. I'm kind of changing my tune where I'm like, okay, I can see the digital world's getting crazier. We will spend more time in it, so maybe it'll be only like a 10% difference where it's like 10% of the money that would be in housing here in Australia goes into housing in the digital world, where you have I hesitate to say like a property there, which is what the metaverse is, but in some cases I would say Bitcoin, if Bitcoin hadn't come around, where would I be spending my money now? It still probably would be in stocks, but I would certainly have been thinking a lot more about housing. Housing.
Okay.
So it's one of those ones where it's like, maybe Bitcoin is the, people say it as a store of value. Well, that's how a lot of people view housing. So you could kind of say, okay, technology has altered that scenario a bit, and it's now, instead of, store of value being gold in your house, that sort of thing, it's like, okay, well, maybe Bitcoin's a part of that as well now. So do you think that there'll be big changes in the future related to housing, the great Australian dream of owning a home, that sort of thing? Will that matter as much in terms of like the cultural sway, in terms of where people spend money, all those questions related to that? Yes.
I think it'll still hold. I even think, fast forwarding in that thought.
Wait, what do you mean? Yes, in terms of...
Yes, I think that
things will change, or...
Yes, I do believe that the mentality of still wanting to own a house, buy an asset for X purpose of having a roof over your head. It's still going to be a thing. Yeah, it's still going to be important. Even in the metaverse side of things. Why do I think that? I think there's just going to be more distribution of living location. So if you could be a 100% remote worker, connect with all of your friends from a metaverse perspective, then you might just go and live 5 hours away in the woods somewhere in a cheap location that you can just live out and have a big amount of land and chill out because you can, and you can connect with everyone that way. Obviously, not everyone's going to be that way. You want to connect with people in person, but maybe you can do it a bit further away. I've talked to people in my office where they said that, if they could work 100% remote or from home, they'd probably just move further away, like 2 hours away from the city, 3 hours away from the city, because, okay, you don't have to come in as often and you could do that once a trip in. So that aspect of it, I could see it, diverging the prices, because then, you've only got so many people wanting to live kind of close into centers of commute. If that changes, well, okay, it distributes to people, and so it moves away the valley. So that might be one way where the bubble of central locations dissipates, and then it moves. I would just say it's not that it bursts, it's just that the valley
deflates
moves
slightly.
Well, not deflates. It's the same amount of, I think, value just moving elsewhere. It just distributes it across the board. If you actually look at Australia and how much is the location of the population versus the land. Like, we've just got such a ridiculous amount of land where nobody lives in it.
Yeah, we're all on the coast.
You can distribute that, right? You could go buy the cheapest house like you'd want in probably 12 hours away from Brisbane, right? You could probably buy something real dirt cheap. Just got to get some good internet and you're good to go. So, yeah, will it change it? Yeah, some way it impacts, but I don't think it'll change the fact that people wanting to either own or want to be in a house, apartment, whatever it may be, like, and live in that sort of space and be able to cherish it or build upon it or something like that. I don't think that'll change too much.
How about so in the book, The Inevitable, that the book review I did recently from Kevin Kelly, he had this idea of these kind of locations where it's very, how would I put it? I've forgotten the verb he used for it, but it was essentially, you will live in a place where it's just expendable and everything is expendable. It's not, you don't own anything. It's the kind of you'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah.
Usually when you hear that, at least in the Bitcoin world, that's kind
whoa.
of, that's kind of like, oh, you're like, the globalists are trying to get you to give up everything and they'll own it. And there's a certain extent to that. But I can also see, for certain aspects of my life where I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't need to own that. Like, I don't need to own a house. I'm kind of fine with that. And maybe that'll never change for me. I've always kind of just been like, yeah, renting's okay. Obviously, things could change if I have a family and it's like, I'd want more security and that sort of thing. But do you think that sort of lifestyle will ever have an appeal to people broadly, or maybe even just a certain type of people where, instead of needing to own their own home in the city, they've got an apartment which they only sleep in half the time, because they're half the other time they're sleeping at their parents or at a partner's or something like that, and so it's just very chop and change. I'm in Brisbane today, like heart of the city centre. I'm going to West End to see some friends. I'll just stay at West End overnight because there's an apartment there, which is a chop and change one where I can just stay there for the night. Yeah,
I mean, not anymore. That happens already now. Like, I do know people who do that nowadays. That's not like a thing that I'd ever gone like, oh wow, it's kind of strange. Like, that happens.
How do they do that? By usually, staying at a friend's place, I'm guessing?
Usually. So what I've seen a couple of people, like some work perspective, guy who used to live, he lives 2 hours away basically from the centre of CDB. Sometimes he'd come and he'd stay in the city,
like a hotel,
like an Airbnb. So you just get an Airbnb for 2 or 3 days, smash out his work, which go back home.
An equivalent-ish of that.
Yeah, so I've seen that sort of thing. I've seen people do the, come in from somewhere, say, oh, hey, I'm going to stay in Airbnb today on a West End place, and then the next day be like, I'm going to go stay somewhere else and just go to basically somewhere that's furnished and just sleep there and not really be light, I guess. So that I've seen that as well. Will we move more towards that? I don't know. I don't think any more than not, to be honest. Like, the more I see it, the more technology coming into place. I kind of disagree a little bit with Kevin Kelly in the sense that, we're going to go into this place where it's you just all like hoarding together, living in an expendable place. I go, not really. I feel like it's going to go the opposite way, where you now have the opportunity to have your own whole place in a further away location and then connect digitally to a lot of other people. Kind of go more towards that, where you'd be like, oh no, I can own a lot of other things now and still stay connected.
I want a grand mahogany table.
Yeah, I think
the carvings.
What's the offset? I think the offset here is, from a metaverse perspective or whatever else, unless the cost is equivalent, which I don't think it will be, right? There's all this cost that people go into clothing, travel, things for office or for business or whatever it may be, that if you cut all that out, and maybe 10% of it goes into the metaverse in the sense of server costs, internet costs, putting in your buying your clothes or whatever it may be, and then you have the rest to spend. Well, then that becomes disposable income, and I kind of feel like people just tend towards spending it on property or other things that they want to just enjoy in themselves or have to themselves. So yeah, disagree with Kevin Kelly though. Disagree.
Would you ever rent out your place as an Airbnb if you were going somewhere else for 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
My own place?
Yeah.
No, definitely not the place that I like where I have like my family home, for sure. No, never really wanted to do that. In fact, I've been offered to do Airbnb out of other properties as well to do it, and it's probably more income. I just go like, nah, can't bother. Why? This goes to the point of, if a property manager takes you a little bit to manage, hey, owning an Airbnb takes a lot more to manage. In fact, you can pay someone to manage the Airbnb for you, and they take a lot of money. Look into it, a lot of money that they take out of that because it's so hard to manage. So honestly, I just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, especially where you're at, which is kind of like a party zone.
Correct.
People like Kyrin coming in and trashing your place.
Yeah. Daily, day in, day out. That wouldn't be any fun.
Well, yeah, I might have some more interesting insights into this in like 5 months, 6 months time if I'm traveling and living the non-property dependent location. I'll still probably get an Airbnb for a fair chunk of it, but it'll be interesting. At least it seems like since COVID, the hostel type of world has changed a lot from what I can tell.
But again, look, just think about it just broadly from a housing perspective. Talking about location, talk about that. It just depends where you are in life. If you're a person who's single and who go through life and you never have a partner, you never have kids, life's very different. You can be mobile. You can do that. If people want to live that way, sure. There's stages through life. If you decide to go down the path of being with a partner, if the partner's slightly different to you, or they do want a place to, they want to buy their things and have the nice table or something like that, you're shit out of luck if you fucking want to be like, oh, I want to move all the time. Good luck. That's going to suck you. If you ever moved house properly with a lot of furniture, you don't want to do that. They list that right at the very top of like most stressful things to do in life.
Yeah, no way.
Don't do that. If you go to the path of having kids, mate, fucking, again, people do this. I'm sure they do this. But good luck enjoying moving your kid around school year to year. There's a reason why people who are in the army who have to move every year say like, man, this fucking sucks as a kid to move around all the time, or go and make new friends, or they want to, send them to a particular catchment, right? People move for these certain things. Unless that changes drastically, it just stages of life. Same thing with, as you get to an older age. There's a reason people downsize. You don't want to stay with a home that's 5 bedrooms if you're only 2 people. Okay, it changes what you want to be doing, the things you want to be doing. So I think all the stages of life, adapt themselves to a particular thing. Obviously, then changes what you're looking from a housing perspective and all the variabilities. So you have to be like aware of that for sure.
Yeah. I suppose just my little summary was kind of similar. It's, everything we were saying. Even if there is a big housing crisis and bubble, you could still find gems within certain locations. I'm sure there is still a bargain to be had here and there, and probably lots of places as well. That being said, big things do change stuff. Olympics coming here to Brisbane in 9 years time. That's probably going to change like a whole lot of shit for the 3 or 4 years around that, in terms of rent, in terms of buying, because that's just going to make things weird. And you just have to deal with that. If you are the 18-year-old at this moment listening to this podcast and then going like, oh shit, I want to buy a property in 6 years time. And it's like, oh shit, Brisbane's getting the Olympics. Like, is this going to factor into my decision making? Yeah, well, probably will have some sort of impact to have. For myself personally, I don't know, Juan, do you ever see me owning a home? Can you ever see Kyrin in a home? I don't know. It's up in the air for me.
There's only one way. There's only one way Kyrin will be owning a home, with furniture, and that'll be if you get with a person who wants that too.
That's probably the big or at the very least like nice furniture.
Yeah, it'll be your partner / having a kid. That's the only thing that's gonna.
Man, I hope she's good at interior design, because if it's up to me, it's not gonna look pretty.
Yeah, man, I lucked out on that. I'm lucked out.
Yeah.
So I was saying to someone today, actually, like,
yeah, you did.
If my place looks nice, it's not because of me.
Yeah.
If it looks shit, it's because of
Nice.
It's not because of me. It's in spite of me.
Yeah, exactly.
That things are looking that way.
Yeah,
So.
your house was very, very nice, which hence triggered this reason for diving into it. It was fun. I enjoyed an episode where it was a bit more concrete than the last couple that we've had.
For
so
sure. I agree.
This was good. In terms of if someone is listening, that young 18-year-old Australian, they wanted to know more about like investing in property or how to think about it, you'd recommend the Property Couch.
Property Couch is really good.
When I listened to them, it seemed to make sense. They seem to focus on like fundamentals and rules of thumbs and in a logical way. So that seemed pretty good. Any other recommendations you've had over the, buy ones, master spreadsheet, only $1,000 a pop?
Honestly, I would say just from an interesting perspective, it's just looking at the raw data, like just going and checking out, realestate.com or whatever other website out there. Just looking at, again, suburbs, location, prices, rent, understanding the fundamentals, understanding like, oh, okay, cool. The the return on investment for this particular suburb is around this, and difference for units and difference for housings and whatnot, and that'll also get you a bit of an idea of. Just find where all of these sources of information can be found. I had a conversation with a close friend of mine maybe 3 months ago where they were looking to buy a property maybe in the not too distant future. I said, can you come around and have a conversation with me and just share with me what are the things you'd like, where you would look? I'm going to spend like 2 hours being like, look into this, look into this, look into this, look into this. There is so many things you can look into from a property perspective. And so I just say aspect is just knowing where to look.
Is there a point as well where you just have to go, I can't look into all of these things, I just need to buy something?
No, you can discern what's the most critical value to know at which stage of the game, right? If you're just looking, right, and you go for the most important things, catchment, distance to work, those sort of things, value assets, gentrified sort of suburb, what do you want? Okay, cool. That ticks the boxes and you go to the next step. Awesome. Then you're looking into individual properties. Cool. Is it on the street? You're looking at this particular property. Okay, is it the least expensive, the most expensive? Has it had renovations? How have they had renovations? What are the like QPS, at least for Queensland? What's the statistics from crime perspective? You can look for crimes on the street. Has it been renovated? Can you do a subdivision? Does it need a subdivision? Is it being rezoned? Is there a bushfire? Is there flooding? Is all this sort of stuff? Cool. Then you go to the house.
This is actually exactly why I should have included it in my negatives.
A lot of that. There's a lot.
You can't diversify. You have to pick one place basically. If you're buying, that's what the average person's going to do. They're going to buy one home. So you have to pick one.
Yep.
And you just listed off everything that could go wrong or be a factor.
And more. And then when you look into individuals, there's a ton lot. And a ton lot. If you're the first time buying, you don't know these things, dude. Easement, location of the pipes, location of the gas pipes, location to your water meters, all those sort of things. Yeah. We're talking about property next door, about building something like that. Again, it's looking into the council properties. Can you build such a thing? All that sort of stuff. All of that factors into it. And if you're first time going into something and you're, oh shit, I didn't realize about this. Well, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. For sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we'll end it there for today. Thank you everyone for joining in. This is a value for value podcast, which essentially means that we provide all this value here for you free of charge. You can get this whenever you want, however you want, through whatever medium. That's very much our motto here. We just ask that you return that value in some form. You can do this in time, talent, or treasure. Time, share this show with someone who you think would be worthy of tuning into, who might find some interest on it, of buying a home in Australia, who's wondering, how do I do it? What's some good resources? What's some things to think about? Juan just listed a whole tons. So you could also reach out to us, and Juan in particular, and he'll be able to help you out with some of that. Talent, if you are, I'll do a little plug for some of the other shows that I'm doing at the moment. So with the book reviews, I'm kind of looking for a backup voice actor to read out some quotes, because inevitably at some stage Cole is going to have like a raspy voice, or he's going to be sick, or he's going to go away somewhere.
Sure.
And it would be nice to have like a backup person to call upon. So if you are interested in reading out some quotes, all you need is a microphone and 10 minutes of time roughly. And if you're interested in doing that, just let me know, because I would love to have a little backup on call if that ever happens to Cole. And then Treasure, which is where you send in a Boostagram. We've already talked about how you can do this, where you can do this. So just reiterating the point that whatever value you get from this show, we just ask that you return whatever you think it's worth. So the value can change. There's probably not going to be a Boostagram crisis anytime soon, because you can just send in more or send in less. It's totally fine. So we do have a big call out at the end of the month for everyone who's done this. If you go onto that same link I talked before, mereimmortalspodcast.com/support, we can show how you can get a t-shirt from there if you send in 100,000 sats or more, which is the equivalent of about 65 Australian at this very moment. And also a little leaderboard down the bottom, so where you can see your place in the list. And I want to do some more things with that in the future. And then if you're completely new to all of this and you're like, what's a Satoshi? How do I send a Boostagram? What do I do this? I've got a little onboarding experience for you on that same page there as well, where I've got a wallet, a little a link that you can click, or a QR code, either work perfectly fine. And this will take you to a location where you can get your first sats. Once again, it's all getting so much easier. This is brilliant, because I was playing around with Moon Wallet the other day, and I was going clean, back and from.
Looks clean.
It was so easy, man. So essentially what I was doing was just converting from Bitcoin on the Lightning Network back to on-chain. And yeah, it was really nice experience compared to
what you've had to deal with.
Maybe what was about like 2.5 years ago now, when we were first playing around with this stuff, and it was hard. It was really hard. So yeah, things are getting easier. So not to worry if this is all still confusing to you. That's cool. We'll wait. There's also the PayPal option. Just saying.
Or you can send a house. Up to you. always plenty of options.
Send us some deeds. Yeah. I'd like some deeds.
Show us that it can be liquid.
Deeds in the mail, please.
Deeds in the mail. All right, Memorial Lounge, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for tuning in, especially if you're tuning in live, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. You can always join us on YouTube. As Kyrin mentioned earlier as well, we are going to be going live as well on the audios in the not too distant future. Stick around, of course, for all the good stuff that's going to be coming out of the Mere Immortals here. But for now, we're going to leave it there. Mere Immortal Lights, thank you very much. Juan out.
Kyrin out.
Good boy.